food industry and their marketing tactics, because they may not be invested in our health, but they do want to sell their food. So whether it was the low fat craze and the fat was removed from foods and replaced by carbohydrates slash sugars, but it was low in fat, actually contributed to other problems in our health profiles. So we're at a point where I think people are trying a little bit more to advocate for their own health and to ask questions of their doctors or their clinicians and practitioners. And I think this is where food is hugely important, because we have the power to improve our mental well-being if we understand the power of food and how we can use it to our best advantage, while also acknowledging there's bio-individuality. So what, and I've realized and studied this in my clinic as well, not everyone can eat the same things and have the same effect.
Today, we're going to be talking about This is Your Brain on Food. My guest today is Dr. Uma Naidoo, and she is a board-certified Harvard Nutritional Psychiatrist, professional chef, and nutritional biologist. She's also the founder and director of the first and only hospital-based nutritional and metabolic psychiatry service in the United States. Dr. Naidoo, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bert. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. You bet. All right. So I always like to ask, what inspired you to write this book? What was the motivation or catalyst to get this book done?
But there's so much confusion in the US, especially around what is the next superfood, what should I eat, what shouldn't I eat? And this is a conversation that's going on for a very long time in popular press, media, and in books. I had the opportunity to found and direct the clinic that I have. And from there, I was given several opportunities to write or contribute to media. And unexpectedly, one of the pieces from I didn't want to say it was 2017 or 2018, was in the Wall Street Journal, which went viral. And it almost happened in reverse. Usually you reach out to publishers and want to publish a book.
Right.
The reverse happened for me. And that's what led me to obtain a great agent and figure out that this was ready to be a book. So it happened in an unusual way. That's how This Is Your Brain on Food came to life. But I had been doing the work and running the clinic and doing the research, and it seemed to make sense as to what I think was important to bring forward. Given that confusion I mentioned, nutritional lifestyle and metabolic psychiatry is this overarching theme of how you can eat better for your mental health. Someone may be plant-based, someone may eat a carnivore diet or be paleo or keto, or simply a pescatarian, whatever it might be. This overarching model of eating can provide you the tweaks you need to optimize what you are eating, maybe different from me or different from your neighbor, for your best mental health. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I love that. And you're absolutely right. We have an incredible amount of confusion about what to eat. And what's so funny is that there was a video I saw on, I think it was Instagram, where this guy is saying, "Hey, for 2024, I'm going to start eating healthy, and I'm just going to eat vegetables." And then he switches over to an expert that talks about how eating vegetables can be bad for you. And so he goes, "Well, I'm going to switch to eating a carnivore diet," switches over to another expert talking about the negatives of the carnivore diet. And you go, and so this happens 3 or 4 times. And he finally says, "I'm just going to drink water." And then the last expert says, "You got to be careful because drinking too much water can be."
I may have seen that, but it was such a great parody of
Yes.
exactly what we're all facing. When we look at social media or try to get information.
And this is why so many people, I think, are sick. They're sick of the confusion, and you're trying different things. And right now, interestingly enough, I think that we see this pandemic, if you will, of Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline. And a lot of experts attribute that to years ago when the confusion about fat versus sugar. And so we removed all the fat from our diet. And now we're paying the price because we have all these problems with mental health, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dementia. And so I think most people are just fed up. It's just like, no matter what you do, it's not right. And I think that the food industry, they're there to sell you food. They're not there to make you healthy. They don't care about
That's
you.
right. That's right. And they're marketing. You are so right about that, because it's food industry and their marketing tactics, because they may not be invested in our health, but they do want to sell their food. So whether it was the low fat craze and the fat was removed from foods and replaced by carbohydrates/sugars, but it was low in fat, actually contributed to other problems in our health profiles. So we're at a point where I think people are trying a little bit more to advocate for their own health and to ask questions of their doctors or their clinicians and practitioners. And I think this is where food is hugely important, because we have the power to improve our mental well-being if we understand the power of food and how we can use it to our best advantage, while also acknowledging there's bio-individuality. So what, and I've realized and studied this in my clinic as well, not everyone can eat the same things and have the same effects. So it's become more personalized now, but the fact that we have that power and it's within our control is hugely important.
Absolutely. The what do you call it? The research that I have found anyway, and obviously I'm not an expert, but there's a great quote out there that sums it up. And it might be by Socrates or anyway, but let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. And that's become a very difficult thing because 80% of our food is processed.
It's processed. And it was, you're right. It was actually Hippocrates, the father of modern allopathic medicine. And thank you for saying that, because he was onto this. He was onto this eons ago, and the science had to follow. And the truth is that most Americans, many of us, are eating processed foods, and that's why it's called the standard American diet or SAD diet. For short, right? Also called the Western diet. But it's true because it's rich in those foods, junk foods, fast foods, and really a ton of high fructose corn syrup or added sugars in foods that we're not even aware of, often in savory food. Or even French fries, fast food French fries. Some of them are actually engineered to have sugar to make them more palatable. So we find them delicious, and then we want to have more. So it's a lot of stuff that the food industry is not. It's like any other industry. They want to make a profit, and we have to understand, and we have to be more savvy about the choices we make.
Absolutely. There is a video on the on YouTube, and you can find it anywhere, but this gentleman is talking about McDonald's French fries. And how McDonald's French fries has like 10 or 20 different ingredients for a potato-based food. And like you said, they have all these things to make it tastier and to really light up that dopamine or the oxytocin
to
or
hijack your cravings.
Yes.
And so you want more, and sugar's one of those things, so you always upsize, and when you upsize, you finish the whole bag, and then the next day you want more. You're like, oh, those are really delicious. I wish you could go get more. It's something that happens in our systems, and there's a biological mechanism that they've tapped into. So
absolutely. All right. So what is nutritional psychiatry? When you explain that to people, what does that mean?
Nutritional psychiatry is the use of healthy whole foods and nutrients to improve your mental well-being. And it is meant to work adjacently with any medications you may be taking as well as very important forms of psychotherapy, which I strongly support because they are very helpful in alleviating mental conditions as well.
One of the things that I love about the book, and again, for you guys who are listening, watching, the book is This Is Your Brain on Food, available wherever you buy your favorite books. And just a quick shout out, one of the things that I liked about the book is it really leaves no doubt how important our gut is to our brain, that they're not disconnected, they're symbiotic.
Yes. The first chapter of the book is called The Gut-Brain Romance. And the reason it's called The Gut-Brain Romance is many people don't realize that the gut and brain are connected. The gut and brain are two different organs, but they arise from the exact same cells in the human embryo. They divide apart and form these two organs that then remain connected by the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, which really acts like a bidirectional text messaging system, transmitting information in the form of neurotransmitters between these two organs, and therefore sending messages. And then you realize that 90 to 95% of both serotonin and its receptors are in the gut. It's not that it's also in the brain and elsewhere in the body, but it's also has a very large presence in the gut. So as food is being digested, with those trillions of microbes being involved, the serotonin and serotonin receptors are all in that same environment. So we begin to understand a little bit more deeply that this is a very comprehensive process, and it's not as separated from everything else. And mental health is not an above the neck concept anymore. It's really integrated with the rest of the body. And one of those things is food and nutrition.
Yeah. Well, and you know, for years we've associated working out with better mental health, a more positive attitude. And I think it's, again, thanks to the confusion in the marketplace, thanks to the food industry for all their great marketing, that people are struggling. You know, this concept of food being your medicine and this connection with gut bacteria, I would say most people have no clue. It's just completely foreign to them.
They don't, and they hear buzzwords like antioxidants, each antioxidants. They hear buzzwords like inflammation, all scientific terms. They also hear things like the microbiome, but it doesn't actually make sense, because when you see that you should eat blueberries because they have antioxidants, what does that actually mean? You know, things are labeled as a superfood. Well, there are tons of them. There are tons of great foods. There isn't really one superfood. What it is a concert of different foods that play very important roles in our body when you are reaching out for healthy whole foods and cutting back on those ultra processed fast foods and junk foods.
Yes, I want to illustrate what we're talking about. I had a guest on the show many years ago. Her name is Mariel Hemingway. Mariel Hemingway's at one point a very famous actress, A-lister, and also she's famous because her grandfather was Ernest Hemingway. Well, Mariel Hemingway is the sole survivor of her family. Everybody from Grandpa Hemingway to her mother, her dad, and her sister all have committed suicide. And based on her research, she has pinpointed this down to primarily their diet. And again, their diet was terrible, and they're taking different drugs and all this other stuff. And she came up with this great term for highly processed food. She calls it noisy food, because they cause, in her words, they do cause this noise in our body, right? We're talking about inflammation, these cravings, and some foods, and I want to get into this, some foods can alleviate depression, some can make depression worse, and your book covers this. And so I just love that noisy food label, and what a vivid story that
Yeah.
how food has affected her entire family. And anyways, but I do want to ask you about, before we get into some of this other stuff, I do want to ask you your thoughts on, we've heard a lot about intermittent fasting and water only fasting. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that intermittent fasting has a lot of good science behind autophagy, the need for the body to have that rest cycle. And yet, even though it has good data behind it, it's not for everyone. I do not believe everyone should be an intermittent faster because there is so much biodiversity in all of us as humans. So it's a great way to manage your diet, manage how you eat, and it works for some people. It's very successful. But some of my patients wake up and they need to take medications, and others wake up starving and they want to eat. And there, it doesn't actually work to restrict their food until a certain time. So, good method for appropriate people, and they should be discussing that with their doctor and finding the right fasting window, etc., is different for men and women. That being said, I'm really not a huge fan of water fasting. I really believe that the body and the brain, very importantly, needs to be fueled. And it's different if you're doing a fasting window and you within a 24-hour period, you're going to eat. Now, a lot of people will ask me about water fasting and about fasting entirely, not going with actual food for days. That works for them and their doctors are okay with it. Well, it's not for me to comment, but it's not something I recommend to my patients. Those that do like to try intermittent fasting, I try to offer them guidance and work in conjunction with their primary care doctor. And part of that, Bert, is because we don't have that much evidence in mental health for the impact of intermittent fasting.
Gotcha. I want to talk about something that one of my takeaways from the book is you talk about depression and PTSD. And I want to get into this a little bit because obviously that's become again, almost epidemic. And then we have a lot of our veterans who suffer from PTSD as well as other people. But if somebody's suffering from depression, what foods should they be avoiding? What foods should they be moving towards?
Right. So, one of the things they want to think about is really shifting away from the standard American diet, which is high in things like, highly sugared foods. And remembering that a lot of savory foods like pasta, ketchup, pasta sauces, store-bought pasta sauces, ketchup, and even salad dressings have high sugar. Like we mentioned, fast food French fries. Also, the high glycemic index carbohydrates can be problematic. Sort of the white rice, pasta, potatoes, having a lot of that and having that be the mainstay of your diet, you just want to try to tweak that as well. Artificial sweeteners are problematic. They are very destructive to the gut. They can be harmful, and we're talking about the older ones. There's some newer ones which have some good data coming through. Fried foods, we know that fried foods are not the healthiest. I like to teach people and talk about air fryers that use convection heat. So fried foods we know are not great. And then the unhealthy fats like trans fats, hydrogenated oils, those types of problems. And then the one thing in depression is nitrates in preserved meats and foods like salami and sausages and other cured meats can be problematic and actually drive depression. So that's something you want to be careful of. Now, foods that you can add, and here's the fun part, is, we always want to have a really abundant anti-depression fighting nutritional psychiatry plate. And one of the first things you can lean into are probiotic-rich foods like plain yogurt with active cultures, tempeh, miso, natto, combination of sort of fermented foods and probiotics, as well as prebiotics. None of these need to be a supplement, by the way. You can supplement them, but you can also lean into things like garlic, onions, asparagus, beans, artichokes that are rich in prebiotic fiber. And prebiotic fiber actually feeds those gut microbes with the foods that they need. Other things you want to think about are the healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish, or even plant-based sources like chia seeds. B vitamins are brain vitamins, and you want to think about things like vitamin B9 from, great example is spinach or leafy greens. Nutrients like magnesium are important as well as iron, and never forget spices and herbs. This is a category that many people don't think about. So saffron and turmeric have a really good amount of evidence in human trials to help mood. Turmeric should always be paired with a pinch of black pepper to make it more bioactive, and also some herbs. So, there's a lot to choose from to make that plate so abundant that you don't feel you're giving up a lot of the foods that you want to try to cut back on.
Absolutely. One of the things that I kind of used to get me when I started switching over to trying to avoid processed foods and just trying to clean up my nutrition is I started looking at all this as almost a new language, because there is, as you start getting into it, there is a lot of terms that you might have to research. There's what do you call it? It's just a different way of living when you're trying to avoid all the processed or avoid processed foods as much as possible. But one of the things that really startled me was how my taste buds changed.
Yes.
I mean, it just, the further you get away from processed food, and I would say especially from sugar, you will feel some body changes. But the first thing I noticed was the way I tasted food. And then if I was to have a really sugary whatever, sometimes it'd give me a headache.
Right. I've definitely heard that before. And I've also heard that sugar becomes so much sweeter because you are now used to cutting back on it and having healthier sources of sugar like berries. Especially my patients will also talk about it as I'm trying to teach them to move from just a regular candy bar to extra dark natural chocolate, which is rich in cacao flavonols and serotonin and magnesium and multiple things that are good for them. And they'll say to me, "Oh, Dr. Naidoo, I used to eat 2 candy bars at night or after lunch. And now I have a square of dark chocolate and I'm satiated, I'm satisfied. It's a great taste to have with a piece of fruit. And it's different because it tastes different and I enjoy it more. It's so fascinating how that happens. So
It is. It is. It's almost like experiencing food all over again, right? It's like, wow, this really tastes good. Why didn't I know this? And again, there is. Look, I love a good burger. So I still eat a good burger. I've gotten away from the fries unless I cook them myself, which I seldom do because they always come out disastrous. So I stay away from the fries, but I still enjoy a nice burger. I will still enjoy a nice steak, but I've cut way back on those things. And it is, again, it is life altering as you start to move down this path. So I want to just like let everybody know that these are some of the changes that you'll go through. I want to also kind of talk about the PTSD again, because the brain and the gut are connected. What are some of the things that if somebody's suffering from PTSD, again, what do we want to move away from? What do we want to move towards?
Great. And Brett, if you, I'm sorry, but if you, I apologize. If I could say something about the red meat
Sure.
for a second. It used to be that we thought red meat was, we shouldn't eat it, we should cut back. And it's not, we understand the science a little bit better now. Some very important research was done and published in the last few years. It really has helped me understand that it's really it's the quality and quantity of the red meat that you eat. So if you're making a burger that you are, kind of putting together at home and cooking yourself, or if you're getting it at a reputable restaurant and not a fast food chain, very different product. So the quality, the source of the meat is important. Grass-fed is important. It's important that you don't eat that every day and for every meal, but it's not like we used to think, oh, that's just going to, kill you entirely. So I think having that balance, paying attention to the source and having it in moderation becomes really important, which I think is also confusing sometimes in the medical literature and in the media. When it comes to PTSD, such an important topic because it feels like there've just been so many reasons for trauma to come forward. But some of the foods to embrace are things like berries. Blueberries are rich in anthocyanins, not only rich in antioxidants, but these plant polyphenols that help the gut microbes that form positive breakdown substances in our body. Omega-3 fatty acids, so things like fatty fish, if you consume fish, or plant-based sources, chia seeds and flax seeds, foods rich in vitamin E, turmeric with a pinch of black pepper, and on occasion, some supplements. But having a dietary change towards a healthy whole foods diet makes a very big difference. And then making sure that you have some of these as part of that diet become very important. An interesting thing is that there are some healthy foods that contain glutamates, things like fish sauce, oyster sauce, even some miso, which is a fermented food, and I would ordinarily recommend highly because of the fermentation process being good. Some of these foods have glutamates, and glutamates actually can worsen PTSD. So when I've had, patients with PTSD and then understand that they are eating some of these healthy foods, and when they start to cut back on that, it can be quite powerful in helping them. So important for us to understand that while we may recommend these foods in some conditions, they may be a little problematic in other conditions.
Again, just like real medicine, right? Quote, real medicine. I mean, you and I could take the same medicine, and we might have completely different responses or reactions. Correct. So the same thing with food. I mean, there are some foods that I can eat really well and somebody might not tolerate as well. I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, the book, I want to give out the name one more time here, and I'll probably do a couple more times, but this is Your Brain on Food. I think it's something that if somebody's looking at changing their nutrition, this is a book I would highly recommend. Some of the things that I like about the way you wrote this book is that it's very simple and easy to understand. And then the chapters don't necessarily have to be read in order. You can skip to whatever thing you're interested in. The other thing that I enjoyed so much is you included some cheat sheets and some menu ideas. And so it's really, for me, a wonderful way to either increase your knowledge of food, or if you're going to change your nutrition, it's a great way to get started. So either way, whether you're a veteran or just getting started, this is something that you definitely guys ought to read.
Thank you.
You bet. I want to ask you about this. Speaking of confusion, what do you think? What do you think about the food pyramid that our government likes to promote? You see it in a lot of public schools. What is your thought on this food pyramid?
Right. So it's really become outdated. At the base of the food pyramid, I think 8 to 12 servings of grains and carbohydrates, which we think very differently about now because we know that refined grains and just those types of starchy foods that are less complex carbohydrates, because our bodies need carbohydrates. Let's not get confused here. They do need, but it's the source again of those carbohydrates. You can get vegetables, for example. So that's really very different now. And it evolved to be, the healthy eating plate, the Harvard healthy eating plate. There's also the government using sort of this healthy food plate. A lot of that is in flux because I think that one of the things I want people to understand is we need micro and macronutrients. We need hydration. Water is important for our body and our brain. Important in many conditions because our body needs water as well as food. When we think about a nutritional psychiatry plate, let's break it down that way. You have your hydration, you have your serving of healthy fat can come from things like avocado or even extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, or even a nut butter. You have your sources of protein. For someone, it could be organic tofu. For someone else, it could be beef or chicken. You want a ton of vegetables, colorful vegetables, those leafy greens with vitamin B9, folate, fiber, and other nutrients. And you want colorful foods which bring those different plant polyphenols. And then you want a small portion of grain, something like quinoa, that is nicely flavored and a small part of your plate. But I really want almost 50% or more of that plate to be these vegetables that you're leaning into, because they're satiating, low calorie, rich in fiber, and really help your gut and your overall health. Along with that, I think making sure that if you're going to eat a sweet, go towards clementine, go towards berries, learn to eat extra dark natural chocolate. Those are ways to kind of have a more comprehensive diet. So I really want people to rethink this, because some of these guidances are good to give us direction, but the food pyramid, has sort of been outdated for a while. So it's important for us to kind of really be autonomous about getting the information and eating for our better mental health as well as our physical health.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And again, I think there's some information out there that our food pyramid is influenced by the lobbyists or by the companies that are able to donate to our government. And so that's why it's outdated, and that's why it's may not be the most reliable thing. And again, you guys do your own research, but I love your take on there. And I love your take on making your vegetables 50% of what you're eating. Again, high fiber, which I want to talk about this. Why is high fiber important for our diet?
Fiber is important because it's what feeds the gut microbes, and we know that the gut microbes, the trillions of microbes that live in our gut microbiome, are so instrumental to our physical and our mental health. So fiber is important for that reason, but also most Americans don't get enough fiber, and research has been done on that. Fiber can only be obtained from from vegetables, fruit, beans, nuts, seeds, legumes, and healthy whole grains. You can't get it from animal proteins. So I think that making sure that you get those plant foods in is important, because you're taking care of your gut health. Now, when the gut is disrupted and you might be not eating fiber and eating a lot of processed, ultra-processed foods, a process called dysbiosis can lead on to inflammation in the gut. And we now know that inflammation of that nature can actually drive conditions like depression, anxiety, cognitive disorders, and more. So I think adding these to our foods becomes important. It's so easy to do by just adding in those vegetables.
Absolutely. And something else that you mentioned a little while ago too, that again, there's a lot of people that take these medications for their health. They need these medications, right? But these medications are not necessarily gut healthy, right? I mean, these medications can really, if you don't take the steps, to feed your gut, it can have devastating side effects.
Yes. If you're referring to antibiotics, there's been some mixed literature on that. Certainly studies have also shown that antibiotics don't affect the gut bacteria, but I'm not sure that I believe that. What I usually suggest to my patients is that they use sources of food. So if they have to be on an antibiotic, because these medications can be life-saving, then make sure that you're eating, especially leaning into gut healthy foods, like plain yogurts, fermented foods, prebiotic foods, and the like. Because either way, even if the research has certain information that it's sharing with us, we know that the gut thrives on these important nutrients. So making it healthy becomes just better for you overall if you are trying to get rid of infection in your body.
Gotcha. No, I like that. It makes a lot of sense. And again, fiber is one of those things that we hear quite a bit about. I think a lot of people don't understand the importance of fiber. And again, speaking of processed food, there are companies out there that will sell you fiber instead of, like you said, instead of having vegetables or something. Hey, here's a cup of fiber. Yeah.
Right. That's true too. And, a lot of people think of fibers that orange drink our grandmothers used to have. Um, and it's so much more than that, right? Because it's not only its marketing, it's not really understanding what you're speaking of. You can certainly get fiber in a powdered form, but you can actually also get it from food. And some gut health experts will actually say, eat the food, and to because you may not get enough from your food initially, you can also use some additional supplements which are over the counter to help the fiber in your diet. But I like people to start building up the fiber in their diet first. And I also want to say that there's a caveat here, because even though fiber is so healthy for all of us, a person with IBS, IBC, IBD, SIBO, sort of these GI conditions, Crohn's, they may not be able to tolerate as much fiber if they're in a state of inflammation, they have an exacerbation of their condition. It actually could make things worse, even though it's a healthy food. So always, make sure you're checking in with your doctor to see what type of plan they can put you on in terms of food, so that over time you can start to increase the fiber and help the healthfulness of your gut. But those are some concerns, when people have those conditions, they may not just be able to increase their fiber and feel okay.
Right. And I think it goes back to, again, I like the suggestion, check with your doctor, but you also experiment. I mean, if you're one of those individuals that seldom has fiber, meaning you seldom consume beans or berries or vegetables, then going gangbusters would,
it would be uncomfortable for anyone. You're absolutely
that's right.
So if you go from 0 to 10 grams, that's not going to be,
it's
not going to feel good if you haven't been eating fiber. But there are also people who might be trying, but they may have other conditions that make it harder. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So I had a question. Somebody sent me a question. I told my people that you were going to be on the show, and they sent me a question regarding red food dye and how some of these red food dyes affect children and our immune system.
Yeah. So these dyes are problematic. They definitely affect our gut microbiome. Now, in the gut microbiome is located 70% of the immune system. So something that is disrupting the gut microbiome will naturally, and again, our body is, even though we may go and see a specialist for our kidney or a different specialist for our lung, the body is all in the same, it's all of these organs are within your body, right? So one of the things for us to understand is something that is disruptive to the gut is potentially going to be very damaging as well to the immune system. My guidance around this is going back to food industry and marketing tactics are not there to help our health.
Right.
We have to advocate for ourselves, read food labels, looking to see that something has red dye or not, that it's flavored naturally, say with beet color, made, obtained directly from beets, or beet powder is very different of a product. And some of the healthier food companies who know that we are worried about these ingredients are making better products now. So stay away from them because they, as much as you can avoid them, these are things to avoid on a food label. The other guidance around a food label is if it's a really thick food label, lots of lines, words you don't understand, it's likely not to be healthy ingredients. You turn something open, it says cauliflower. You turn something, and it could be, frozen foods are perfectly fine. In fact, a good option for us if we don't want to clean a whole head of cauliflower, just make sure it doesn't have added source sodium, sugar and that type of thing, because it could actually be a great product for you. But when you turn over a bag of food and it has, nuts, or it has just has what the ingredient is, very different. So paying attention to that and then making sure that those dyes are absent, super helpful.
Yes. And I think, again, us have to take control. We have to be our own advocates. We have to, as much as painful as sometimes it is reading those labels, it
Yeah.
could make a huge difference in our lives. And it's just
Yes.
one of those things that we as citizens, we can change things by voting with our dollars.
Yes.
Right now, Walmart, I think, is either number one or number two for sources of vegan type of products and things like that, which nobody would have ever thought that would have happened, but they got so much, they got contacted by the consumer so much that this is what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Walmart
Mm-hmm.
started supplying it. Costco does the same thing. Costco now is being there. I've seen a couple of articles where Costco, the extra virgin olive oil that Costco sells under the Kirkland
Right.
brand is high quality.
Yes.
And so we as consumers can vote with our pocketbooks and get rid of some of these harmful ingredients.
I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think that consumers realize the power they have, and realize that in numbers we can be very powerful to make an impact change. It would be very hard, but for us to take on the food industry and the food companies. Not that we can't comment on what they do or be aware, but you can vote with your dollars. And that is super important when it comes to food, when it comes to produce, when it comes to the source of your food, when it comes to soda, whatever it is, that makes a difference. So I think the fact that these companies now even keep a wider range of foods that are plant-based or better qualities of food like olive oil makes a big difference to our lives.
Absolutely. Something I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned prebiotics and probiotics. I'm very familiar with the probiotics. What is a prebiotic and why should I take it?
So prebiotics are certain foods that actually nurture the gut microbiome. They actually feed the microbes. And prebiotics are things like certain legumes, the allium family, garlic, leeks, and onions are rich in prebiotic foods. They are bananas, berries, things like Jerusalem artichokes, leeks, asparagus, so a wide range of foods. Now, what these foods do when we eat them is, you can go and you can get a supplement from over the counter, but these foods actually feed the gut microbes, just like if you had guests in your home, or say your parents came to spend the weekend, you would give them breakfast, you would offer them food. In a similar way, we need to think about our gut microbes as really a part of our integrated self. By taking care of them, they take care of us, because the trillions of microbes do a ton of things. They take care of our immune system. They deal with vitamin production and hormone production. They deal with sleep and circadian rhythm. They help with immunity and infection control. They help our mood and other things. So they're busy. They're busy, and they have a lot of different functions to perform. I haven't enlisted all of them, but taking care of them helps them function. And prebiotics is one easy way to do that.
And again, one of the things that you listed off there, which Americans are struggling with, is sleep. That's become a thing now. And so people are already tired. And then we have, again, these food companies that are marketing us these ridiculously caffeine enriched drinks, right? Where they have hundreds, 200 or 300 milligrams of caffeine. I have my brother who, again, he does the CPAP. He's been working on his sleep. He's still waking up tired. He's even had a heart attack, and he's a skinny guy. He's one of those skinny guys, but anyway, he will have 2 Red Bulls before he leaves his house to go to the office. It's like, dude, how can you consume that much caffeine?
Right.
It's amazing to me.
It's sports beverages, coffee drinks, all of these, not only can they keep us awake, the caffeine can really create a buzz that for many people can be very anxiety provoking. My new book is called Calm Your Mind with Food. It's really a follow-up to This Is Your Brain on Food, but focusing entirely on anxiety, which has become really epidemic proportions in the world. But one of the things people don't realize is they know that coffee may not work, may not be the best for them. But even decaf or half caf can just make them so jittery. Now, it affects the anxiety, but it also affects their sleep. If they have it, say, after 12 noon, being conservative, it can impact their sleep. So, I think that many people who are sleeping poorly don't realize that they have anxiety. And when you start to address the anxiety, they're like, wow, I'm sleeping so much better. So it's an important correlation just to understand right there.
I love that. All right, so that's a great thing to talk about, anxieties. What foods, if I'm an anxious person, if I've been diagnosed with anxiety, what foods should I be avoiding?
So in terms of foods to avoid, certainly for some people, caffeine can be problematic. Coffee is a pretty healthy substance. It's rich in plant polyphenols. But caffeine can be problematic for some people. The ultra-processed foods, you mentioned the food dyes, ultra-processed, processed junk foods, hugely problematic. The sugar-sweetened beverages can not only create a buzz, they can keep people just on edge. Artificial sweeteners can be very disruptive to the gut microbiome and actually worsen anxiety. Trans fats are problematic, and we can always throw in the standard American diet and all of this, because these are going to be things that people just want to be able to stay away from.
Yeah, it's again, you mentioned how artificial sweeteners can mess with the gut biome,
right?
And just about every packaged food out there, every packaged drink is going to have artificial sweeteners. Even healthy drinks are going to have artificial sweeteners.
That's right.
And let me tell you, I've become very suspicious, even when a company says, "Hey, this is a healthy drink," that's usually the opposite. And again, when you start reading the label, you see that it's chock full of sweeteners, both sugar and or artificial sweeteners, and it's chock full of sodium, and it's not healthy, but they're able to market as a healthy drink. But that's right. Something that's something that most people are not aware of, that these artificial sweeteners, these dyes, all this stuff is going to interrupt that gut biome. And again, it's going to cause these other ailments. It's going to increase your depression or your anxiety or whatever. Let me ask you this. When it comes to another thing that's become very commonplace is autoimmune, chronic fatigue. What kind of foods should I be looking for when I'm trying to alleviate this chronic fatigue or my autoimmune?
So, I mean, when we think about this from the perspective of mechanisms like inflammation, autoimmune disease, the gut microbiome, we have to realize that one of the ways that the gut microbiome and the gut microbes can be powerful is what we feed them and how we take care of our health. A simple thing to do is to think about what are you eating and how can you clean up that diet a little bit. Not necessarily give up something entirely. Can you cut back and tweak certain foods? So I like people to think about it this way. The mnemonic I have is swap, eat, and walk. And very simply swap out, the ice cream, the extra glass of wine, the caffeinated beverage that you've been leaning into, or the diet soda, which could have any or all of those things, whatever it might be. It could be a beverage, it could be a food. Then I want you to eat more. I want you to eat those anti-inflammatory and antioxidant-rich foods, the colorful berries, the colorful vegetables, the high-fiber foods, all those micronutrients that you're going to get, and then clean proteins, healthy fats. So, clean proteins could be grass-fed beef or organic tofu. It could be whatever your choice is. And walk is meant for really not just walking, but any kind of movement, mindfulness, sort of a holistic and integrated approach. It could be breath work, which I feel it's such a powerful thing for people to learn, especially for anxiety. Learning a mindfulness practice that works for you. It could be that you just close your eyes and you think of a peaceful scene, a beautiful moment in your life, something that gives you peace. People always assume, it has to be a type of meditation. No, it could be something that appeals to you. So, but just by using these different steps, you can start to pivot on the way that you're eating to help these conditions. But all of these things include calming, down your system, mindfulness exercise, and then adding in those foods that are so powerful for your gut microbiome, understanding that so much of your immune system is in the gut microbiome.
Yeah, that's incredible. It sounds like no matter your ailment, again, the food is possibly the medicine.
Yes.
And what we've come accustomed to here in the US is that if I have an ailment, I'm going to go and get a pill or a shot. That's kind of like the go-to, right? I'm feeling anxious. Let me go get a pill for that versus looking at my nutrition and saying, you know what, I'm having a lot of caffeine. Maybe I can cut back on my caffeine. But again, we have the medical community as well as the consuming community that, hey, I'm anxious. Let me go get a pill. You show up to the doctor. I would say most doctors aren't going to say, hey, let's look at your diet. Let's look at your nutrition. Let's look at your gut biome. General practitioners are going to, I guess a general practitioner would probably refer that out. But bottom line is whoever is going to give you the anxiety medicine is just going to give you the medicine. They're not going to check these other items that may produce the same result, but no side effect, no cost.
That's right. It doesn't serve big pharma or certain entities in the country for us to rely on food as medicine, right? I think we know that. Right. And so, although there are, recent articles, even in journals like JAMA, talking about a food prescription and the pluses and minuses and the fact that, we are doing the research to improve the knowledge and movement of these things. The power is in our hands to understand that we have the autonomy and the power at the end of our fork, and that we can vote with our dollars, right? It's a very powerful thing to be able to do, citing your example from earlier. And many people don't realize that. They assume that we can't make a decision. And I think that we not only can, we can make a change that way. So we shouldn't assume that, you can't talk to your doctor about lifestyle medicine changes, that you can't implement if your doctor doesn't feel that your blood pressure is so high at this moment that you absolutely need a medication. Can you lose a few pounds? Can you do some exercise? Can you rework this? Can you talk to a dietitian, an exercise specialist? Just get some extra help. Even a coach can really help you get the things that you need, and implement some healthy habits that can help you maybe fend off taking your medication. And asking your doctor, can you try this for a few months and come back and recheck it? By all means, I'm not saying don't take a medication when you have life-threatening high blood pressure or other things, but there are ways to have this conversation.
Absolutely. Years ago, I was right after my brother had his heart attack. I thought I'd check out my heart. And so the doctor came back and said, oh, your cholesterol, I think at that time my cholesterol was like 230. And he says, look, if and this is my primary care, and he knows, he goes, Bert, you exercise, you eat pretty good. We may have to put you on statins. If your cholesterol gets gets much higher, we're gonna have to put you on a statin. And that bothered me a lot. It bothered me because my first go-to was, okay, I'm going to check out my nutrition. What can I tweak there? And so this started me down this path where I went pescatarian, which is just eating fish And my family started complaining that like the house always smells of fish and you've ruined fish for us, Dad. And that dropped my cholesterol. And then I went vegan for quite some time. I went vegan. And again, it's like learning a new language. But my cholesterol, it took 3 years, but my cholesterol went from 230 to under 100. And my good cholesterol, I can't remember, is it the LDL? Anyway, the good cholesterol went up by 10 points. So my point being is that doctors, again, they're conditioned to prescribe. And again, you have to be your own advocate. You have to try things to see what's going to work. And when you're dealing with the body, it's not going to, it's going to take time. If you're trying to reduce your cholesterol naturally, it's going to take, like in my case, a couple of years, or it's going to take months to, like and like you suggested, try something and you go back and you get your blood work and you test things out. But bottom line is, we as consumers have to change the way we believe about getting a pill or a shot. Try food first.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
I want to ask you, this is something that I think most guys, some of the ladies too, will be very excited about, but I wanted to ask you about sex and food. This is something that's covered in your book. So if I'm struggling with, let's just start with the easy one, libido. My sex drive is winding down. What should I be looking for? What can I do dietarily?
Yeah, so one of the things you want to think about with libido is again going back to components of that standard American diet and just being careful about the cutting back on the foods that maybe you've picked up some problematic foods from during the pandemic. Another one is alcohol. Just being wary of the amount that you are consuming, because that can be problematic, certainly for men. And so it can actually be problematic in all fairness to men and women. So just drinking in moderation. I always talk about, if you do consume alcohol, clean cocktails. If you don't drink, no need to start now. But it's just about that moderation. Sugar, problematic. I think we know that certain types of licorice. So being aware of certain candies or other products that have a licorice extract. And this is a different one. It's not a food, but it's cookware. So a lot of nonstick cookware used to contain, and some still may, PFOAs. And so just switching your cookware to things like cast iron, stainless steel, and I have a list in actually in both my books. I talk about recipes and have recipes, but also tell you how kind of guide you to how to set up your kitchen. But the foods that you can actually lean into are things that boost oxytocin. And some of those foods are things like extra dark natural chocolate, magnesium, and certain essential amino acids that are found in certain meats, in dairy, if you consume dairy, in vegetables and eggs. Nuts like pistachios, almonds, and walnuts, actually thought to be helpful. Eating apples, pomegranates, onions, and avocados, and certain spices and herbs. So understanding that these are not overnight fixes, but when you on the one hand, start to swap out those unhealthy foods, and then you start bringing in these healthier options and using specific foods that say help with oxytocin or certain healthy fats from certain nuts and things like that, you are starting to build up the reserve on foods that are going to help over time, potentially really relieve some of the libido problems that you might have. And certain, mental health medications like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors can actually suppress libido. And so became that was actually one of the main reasons I wanted to discuss this in the book. Is it's on the one hand, sometimes a person needs a life-saving medication if they have a severe depression or debilitating anxiety, certainly to start, but they can also cause you side effects.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing that you brought that up. Yeah, on one hand, you need this life-saving drug on the or medicine. On the other hand, yeah, it might affect your libido. One of the things, again, we've talked about the standard American diet, SAD. It's it's incredible to me that how many, again, doctors will, again, prescribe the pill versus saying, hey, you're 100 pounds overweight. You may want to make some other changes. Yes. Because the pill might help you, but it's not the cure. You're going to have to make some changes. And that might be, again, we talked about cutting back on red meats or animal proteins in general, because they do clog the artery, and your blood doesn't flow. And then there's, what do you call it? We've talked today a lot about gut immune or biome and stuff like that. And it's unfortunate that we as consumers, we want to go to the pill, we want to go to the shot. We don't want to do the hard work of changing our nutrition.
Right. I think this is true. And again, I think that the most obvious thing is, what are we eating and what are we doing? There's been a lot of more recent and evolving research around red meats and saturated fats, and they're not really as devastatingly bad as we thought. And in fact, the impact can be somewhat different in our body. However, that being said, it doesn't mean that we should only eat red meat. It doesn't mean we should only eat fish. Having that balance in whatever you do becomes important. If you consume alcohol, if you drink coffee, if you eat eggs, if you eat dairy, whatever it is, or maybe you're entirely plant-based and you yourself have done a vegan diet, maybe you're doing that, but it's also the quality of what you're eating. As a very savvy patient once pointed out to me, a vegetarian diet can be Coke and pizza, right? It technically vegetarian, and so I think that potato chips can be vegan. So let's always be, when we eat the rainbow, it's not a rainbow cake. It's the colors of the rainbow. So we always have Skittles. To qualify. That's right. It's exactly not Skittles. So we always want to clarify and just be helpful about the message we're sharing. And you're so right. We often don't realize the power that we have to make a change and to make a lifestyle change that is hugely helpful to not only our physical health, metabolic health, but then also our weight. And all of them are connected.
Absolutely. All right. Probiotic, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in your book you talk about probiotics when it comes to positively affecting erectile dysfunction. Is that correct? Or did I misread that?
Probiotics? Is that in the libido chapter, or?
I'm trying to remember. Hold on. Let's see if I can.
Well, I'm not remembering the fact in that way, but it's.
Let's see. Hold on. And like I said, I might have misremembered it because I know you mentioned quite a bit about probiotics, not only the supplement but also available through our food.
Right.
Probiotics. As far as like things like Alzheimer's has shown to relieve that.
Yes. So probiotics can definitely be helpful in sexual health in men. And again, it's that link to gut bacteria. If you have certain low levels of specific types of say bifidobacteria, this can be linked with certain conditions in men. So probiotics are definitely a way to do that. The reason I want people to try to get it from food is food can have many different, or fermented foods can have many different bacteria in it. If you're taking an over-the-counter probiotic, that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. But remember, it will have certain strains of microbes in that. So important to do. Probiotics can be hugely helpful in conditions like depression. Food can be very powerful in terms of cognitive disorders. Remember, we mentioned that one of the underlying things for conditions that even affect our cognition, how we think, our memory, etc., is also inflammation. And one of the ways that gets worsened is by how we eat, because our gut microbiome, if it's disrupted by things like the standard American diet, potentially gluten or non-celiac gluten sensitivity can affect certain people. So they may need to be careful about that. Again, with gluten, it's the source of the gluten. I would argue that, artisanally made sourdough bread with a starter and has a fermentation process is very different from sliced bread that we buy in the supermarket that's shelf stable. Things like coffee, olive oil, herbs and spices, and luteolin-rich foods have all shown some promise in conditions like Alzheimer's and basically cognitive disorders. And understanding that we still want to talk about going back to that healthy whole foods diet, right?
Right.
That and then these little extra tweaks.
Absolutely. And I think, again, to further emphasize that point, you mentioned whole foods, ladies and gentlemen, whole foods. It makes a big difference. Yes, potato chips may qualify as food and may qualify as vegan, but it doesn't qualify as a whole food, as opposed to eating a potato.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm a vegan. I eat potato chips and
right. That's my diet, and I'm sure the food label says fortified with something. So
yes.
so I'm getting my X, Y, and Z. I mean, this is the thing. So
Absolutely. All right. I want to ask a couple more questions. This came from our audience, specifically for migraines. What is your take on migraines and alleviating chronic migraines?
yeah, I know that certainly triggers for things like migraines in individuals can include alcohol. Red wine can be problematic. Certain sweeteners, aspartame, has been certainly shown in research to be problematic for migraine headaches. So being cautious about those. Tyramine containing foods, which include certain legumes and beans. Sometimes cheeses and yogurts can be problematic for people. So I would say that, depending on the guidance that you're getting from your neurologist treating a migraine, you can certainly be mindful of those foods. And I've even, I would say cut back on them or try to see if your headaches get any better when you do cut back on these. We know that ultra processed foods that contain things like sulfites, and foods that contain sulfites include certain processed sausages and salamis and hams. You might be taking a vitamin or another supplement that could contain caffeine, that can make a headache worse. So just being aware of what you're consuming, what is in the food that you are eating becomes hugely important. And I think that is one way to sort of not only help and clean up your diet, but think about ways that you can offset some of the triggers for migraine headaches.
Absolutely. And again, it sounds like you have to, if you're suffering from migraines, you're going to have to do the work and figure out, okay, this is working, this is not working. And again, it's because we have such, I don't want to use the word bad quality or the phrase bad quality, but because because we have so much access to processed food that, and then there's so much confusion, right? Because again, the companies can market something as healthy when in fact it's not.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it sounds like if you're suffering from any kind of ailment, the first thing you want to check is your food intake, your gut health, maybe start repairing that, because from your book, it seems like, and this is something I just learned, 70%, you were mentioning 70% of
Immune system
of our immune system is located
is in the
gut. And so
is in those cells. Yeah.
right. So if you can handle that 70%, that's going to clear everything up, or almost everything.
Right. It's definitely going to make an impact, and that's where food is so powerful. Even when you might have triggers for your migraine that might be external, but one of them could be food.
All right. Let me ask you this, and I know we're getting tight on time, but I appreciate this so much. One of our other questions from an audience member is there a specific breakfast or a specific way to start the day when you're dealing with chronic pain or chronic fatigue?
The way that I think about this is by really adding more of antioxidant and anti-inflammatory rich foods. If you consume eggs, for example, pastured eggs, but with lots of added veggies like spinach, different colors of peppers, these are mood boosting. These are fiber rich foods. You could also do something like a chia pudding, which is rich in fiber, protein, add in some coconut or plant-based milk, add in nuts and seeds, rich in antioxidants, put in those berries for the anthocyanins and the colors that you are looking for to help give you energy. I also think that once in a while, having a smoothie with a clean protein powder, with some spinach in it, some avocado for healthy fat, nuts and seeds, a plant-based milk, whatever it is that makes it easy for you, because not everyone consumes dairy, and sometimes people feel certain forms of dairy, if it's not grass-fed, may exacerbate some of their conditions. So that's where it becomes highly specific to the individual. I think grass-fed dairy in moderation is okay, but I'm also very careful where and how I source my dairy or cheeses. These are ways to give your body some energy. You need a combination of micro and macronutrients. That's healthy fats, protein, some form of fiber-rich complex grain. You need hydration. All of these become super important. So, we want that balance on our plate, and that's going to give you the energy you need. Another thing that is great to add in, even to a chia pudding, is something like a nut butter. That's a healthy fat and a protein. So it's a great way. It's got fiber in it. It's a great way to add in these nutrients. But the more times that you are going towards a whole food and away from a Pop-Tart for breakfast, the healthier your body is going to feel, as well as your brain, because you're eating a whole food. So I just recently actually shared some of my favorite breakfasts. I want to say it was at CNBC, and that's available online. So gave them, not, although I shared some recipes, I think mostly they listed the foods that I talked about. So,
all right. Last but not least, we had an audience member that wrote to ask regarding eliminating mind fog. She says she's getting what she thinks is plenty of sleep, but she's still waking up with a lot of just mental fog or mental fatigue. What's your take?
Right. So two things. Firstly, hydration, super important. And another one is luteolin-rich foods for brain fog. These can include things like fresh peppermint. So I suggest that people put fresh peppermint and make a tea of it. It can be very refreshing, uplifting, and sort of clarifying. Sage, thyme, hot and sweet peppers, celery seeds, parsley, artichokes, dried Mexican oregano. All of these actually can help with brain fog. Also things like acetylcholine-rich foods. Now, acetylcholine is found in things like egg yolks and beef liver. You may not eat those foods, but you can also eat foods like white beans that contain another nutrient. So just adding in these foods can become hugely important. And I have a lot of these lists in This Is Your Brain on Food, and some more anxiety busting foods in Calm Your Mind with Food.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate this conversation so much. I've learned so much. The book is beyond awesome. As I mentioned earlier, one of the great things about this book is it is very easy to understand. You give so many, like I said, the cheat sheets and the menus, and if somebody wanted to find out more about you, what's the best website to find out more about you?
My website is umanaidoomd.com, and sign up for my new Substack newsletter, because I share recipe every week, and I always discuss a food every week, so that you have the science behind the food, the research, and how you can buy it and how to prepare it. So it's a cool way to share food, one of my favorite topics, and then the nutrition behind it. You can also follow me on social media at DRUMANAIDOO, on my social media accounts, and check out my new book, Calm Your Mind with Food, which is a follow-up to This Is Your Brain on Food, but focusing in on anxiety, which has increased by 25% since COVID worldwide. And it's the reason that I drew up a protocol, a list of recipes, an anti-anxiety shopping list, and foods to avoid, foods to eat, specifically for anxiety, that goes much more deeply into the subject and hopefully will help more people.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm going to put all of these things in the show notes so you guys can just click. And again, Dr. Uma, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was lovely to talk to you.
All right, we're out. Thank you so much.
Amazing.